in memory of James Traynor and Martin O'Brien. Rest in peace. So for some time I've been aware that our family have a couple of relatives who died in World War One in Gallipoli, and so Karen and I for some years have been talking about making the effort to get up there and try and find them. So the purpose of this little video is to record our trip and the experience we had a couple of days ago in October 2018 while we were looking for my two great uncles. It was a moving experience, and I hope you enjoy the small clip. It runs for about 23 or so minutes. Thanks. So before Karen and I go anywhere on our trips, we always look at the map first of all, just to work out where we've got to go and what we've got to do. So here's the map of most of Turkey, and this is Istanbul here. We're going to fly into the airport. It's a little bit out over this way, and we're going to stay in the Hilton Hotel for a night because we get in at about 12:30 in the morning. 12:30 at night sort of thing. So it'll be very late for us, and we'll just crash in the hotel that night. And the next day, our friend Doug from New Zealand is visiting. So that's cool. We're going to be in the same hotel. We'll catch up with him, spend a day with him, and then the following day we're going to drive down the coast. If you just follow the mouse down along here, pick up the car at the airport around here, drive down all the way down the this peninsula here. That's the Dardanelles. That's what they were fighting over. They were trying to prevent the Ottoman Empire from using this waterway, and so they were going to invade this side and come across and cut them off, but it failed. That's actually the town of Gallipoli there, but that's not exactly where we're going to be going. I guess we'll drive through there. We're going to stay a little place called Ekabat down here. We've got a hotel, and then the next day we're going to drive across here and up to Anzac Cove. And that's pretty much where it all happened, and these are the cemeteries all around up here as well. So that's the plan, and then we'll go back to Istanbul, spend a night, and then fly out again. So only about 5 days, but it'll be really cool. We'll actually get to visit the cemeteries, the Commonwealth War graves, and find Great Uncle Martin and Great Uncle James. So we're really excited about that. When deciding what we wanted to do when going to Gallipoli, we decided to put a post on Facebook just asking other people who had perhaps visited Gallipoli what they suggest we should do. And we got a really great number of responses from people, which was quite surprising. Some really good advice about staying overnight in Istanbul, driving down to the Dardanelles the next day after hiring a car. And don't drive in Istanbul, but hire the car from the airport, which is a really good advice. And then staying in a little hotel in certain places. And so that was really neat. So we've taken all that advice on board, and we've planned our trip around some people's really good ideas. We've also downloaded a couple of apps from the internet as well on our phones from the New Zealand Defence Force, and they are the Ngā Tupuai applications. And they give a really good overview. It's Chris Pugsley, who's a military historian from New Zealand, and he gives a really good historical overview of Gallipoli. And also there are interactive maps with really good advice about what to do, where the actual cemeteries are. There's quite a large number. So it was a really good idea. I'm glad we did this. We posted this on Facebook and got some great responses. So thank you to all those people who did that. And Jackie, my cousin, she also reminded me that we've got James Traynor, who's our great uncle. He was killed on the 8th of May 1915. So that's great that she posted that on Facebook, and that'll help us. So we've got 2 people to find now as well. So that's James Traynor and Martin O'Brien. So that's really great. Thanks, Jackie. So searching for great uncle Martin and James Traynor, we decided to go to the Commonwealth War graves website online, and it's quite simple. You just need to type in, let me try it, and see just a surname, and then down the bottom here you'll see there's a huge number of names of J. Traynor. But of course we probably need to do a bit of filtering because there's a lot of trainers, I guess, that have died. So if I put in First World War, that'll filter it again. And if I put in maybe New Zealand, I guess he was with the New Zealand. And there he is, James Traynor. 10/591, and he's at the 12 Tree Copse New Zealand Memorial. And you can click on the bit more detail, and then it gives, yep, there we go, son of Mrs. J. Trainer of Wyndham and Invercargill. So that's it, and then you can download the certificate as well, which I've done. So that's really cool. We can easily find these guys online and find out exactly where they are. So filtering on O'Brien and the Commonwealth War Graves website, it threw up a lot more O'Briens, so I had to do a little bit more filtering, and as you can see, there's 24 the First World War served with New Zealand, so there's quite a few more to go through and hunt for, but I found him here. Martin O'Brien died on the 1st of May 1915. He's at the Lone Pine Memorial, and again we can download his certificate here, and I can confirm there, Mr. and Mrs. J.A. O'Brien of 33 Ann Street, Roslyn. So we'll download the certificate as well and take that with us so we can find him as well. So that's both Martin and James that we've found online. Now we've just got to go and find them in person. Okay, so all our bookings are done. Flights, rental cars, you name it. Hotels. I've got the 2 certificates for James Trainer, and if I can show you, Martin O'Brien. So Martin is at Lone Pine and James is at the 12 Tree Copse. First phase of the trip is Turkish Airlines 1972 from Heathrow to Istanbul. So we leave, what time is it now? 5:30, 6:30 or something on Tuesday the 9th of October. We fly to Istanbul tonight and we get in there tomorrow morning about just after midnight. Hotel, it's very nice. The Hilton Bakarakoy. I'm not sure if you can see, but that's what it looks like up there. It's the Bosphorus there. You're in Istanbul. Istanbul's interesting. That's it, really. Lots of empty apartments. Their economy's in the shit. So we took a bit of time to have a look around Istanbul for a day. Don't ever take the taxis there, they're absolute rip-off merchants. It was a pretty scary experience actually. This is the Hagia Sophia, which is one of the most famous mosques in Istanbul. It was quite interesting. And we took a look inside as well. As you can see, the panels are really awesome, the mosaics. And it was it's an ancient mosque. It used to be a church during the Christian period, and then the Muslims took over and they've turned it into a mosque. Beautiful place, really, really worthwhile visiting. The trip out of the airport in the Avis rental car, or Avis rental car, down to Gallipoli. Always a little bit stressful getting out of the airport, learning to drive again in a foreign country. But we do really well with Karen driving and me navigating. I've kind of got a good sense of navigation on the maps.
And I don't.
No, I didn't say that. She's actually just a safer driver, I think, as well, because she takes it so slowly, but actually very safely. So it's okay. We've made it out of, and it's all a bit, complex and confusing, but we've got the maps on the phone, and we're doing okay. So here we are on the way now down to Gallipoli, which is Gallipoli in Turkish. The Turkish language. Here we go. We're going up to Yanyoli and Gamuspala, Deniz Koskla. Always places I wanted to visit. And Tekkerdag. It's almost a bit Dutch. Anyway, that's us on the way. Here's the view. Not so exciting.
So this is the Akbas Hospital Memorial. This is where over 1,200 Turks died as they were receiving treatment here at this hospital, just here on the peninsula. This is the room that we're staying in here, the Hotel Casa, what's it called? Casa something or other. And this is the room that Channel 7 reporter stayed in for a month, apparently. And Jack Nicholson stayed in the room next door. Now, apparently it's a really lovely, and it is, it's a beautiful little hotel, very authentic. So we are here now, and it's really just a 5-minute drive up the road to the turn off to Anzac Cove. So we're well and truly very happy here, and the people are really nice. So yeah, happy. So we're at the 12 Tree Copse Cemetery here in Gallipoli, and this is where great uncle James Traynor is buried. So we're going to try and find his grave now. So at the rear of this cemetery stands the 12 Tree Copse New Zealand Memorial, which commemorates 179 men of the New Zealand forces who died in this sector and have no known grave. Most fell on the 8th of May, which is the date that great uncle James's death has been recorded, 1915. During the Second Battle of Krithia, the New Zealand Brigade attacked across a field carpeted with daisies, which didn't offer very much cover from the Ottoman machine gun and rifle fire from the flanks and the woodland ahead. And so by nightfall they reckon they advanced only about 350 metres, halfway to the Ottoman front line, at a cost of over 750 officers and men wounded, killed or missing. And so great uncle James was one of them. So we're going to try and find his grave now. So what we've discovered is that there isn't actually a resting place for James because his body wasn't found, but what they've done is this beautiful memorial here that we're standing in front of is in memory of all of those New Zealanders who died but their bodies couldn't necessarily be found, or maybe only body parts. But what we have found is here in the Wellington Infantry Regiment, Private Traynor, J. Traynor. So that's him. And so this is along with all his buddies who died with him on the 8th of May 1915, and they're all recognised by this beautiful memorial. Here are recorded the names of officers and men of New Zealand who fell in the Second Battle of Krithia, May 1915 and in July 1915. Their graves are known only to God. So that means we don't know where his body is, but they've put this up. James Traynor. Rest in peace.
Named after a small pine wood which stood just south of here at the start of the Gallipoli campaign, this cemetery was created after the armistice, when graves were brought from the surrounding battlefields in smaller burial grounds nearby. Among them were 925 from Hogan's Bluff Cemetery, in which were buried many of those who fell in the fighting of June and July at Gully Ravine, and more than 520 from Clunes Venel Cemetery near Krithia. This is now the final resting place of some 3,300 Commonwealth servicemen. Over 2,200 remain unidentified, their graves covered by earth and grass, their names inscribed on memorials to the missing. At the rear of the cemetery stands the 12 Tree Copse New Zealand Memorial, which commemorates 179 men of New Zealand forces who died in this sector and have no known grave, including great uncle James. Most fell on the 8th of May 1915 during the Second Battle of Krithia. The New Zealand Brigade attacked across a field carpeted with daisies, offering little cover from Ottoman machine gun and rifle fire from the flanks and the woodland ahead. By nightfall, the brigade had advanced some 350 metres, halfway to the Ottoman front line, at a cost of over 750 officers and men wounded, killed or missing.
So we've just listened to the recording from Chris Pugsley, who's the New Zealand historian, military historian, and he's given a really good account of what happened here. So just over to the left there, on the 8th of May 1815, or just where I'm pointing the camera now, that's where the Wellington Brigade made their attack through those trees and just beyond those trees to the little village which is beyond those trees. You can't quite see it. and to the right was the Australians. And apparently on the 8th of May, the Wellington Battalion got cut to pieces just there. So great uncle James would have been one of them, running across that field over there into battle, and very, very close to the Turkish lines. So that's probably where he fell. And they say the bones are still scattered all over there, and they can't obviously identify them. It could be Turks, could be British, and could be New Zealanders, but he's one of them, lying out there somewhere in that field.
So after the 12 Tree Copse cemetery visit, we drove back up north to Anzac Cove, and this is the cove itself. It's really small, and there were thousands of New Zealanders and Australians on the 25th of April 1915 making a landing and trying to fight their way up that terrain. Well, the video doesn't do it justice because it's actually sheer cliffs, and that what I'm pointing up to now is Puggy's Point, where a New Zealand officer managed to get up there with some men and hold that high ground. A remarkable feat. That knob of clay there is the Sphinx. They tried to climb that first. Almost impossible. So the Turks do a great job looking after this cemetery or this area of land for us, and it's very sacred ground for New Zealanders and Australians. But you can imagine thousands of men coming ashore in the morning of the 25th of April 1915 in this tiny little beach, trying to take the high ground.
So this is what they call Shrapnel Valley. We're just walking up to the little cemetery here at Anzac Cove. And from what I've read, this is the worst place, or one of the worst places to be. So on that high ground there, you can see where the Turks were shooting down to the Allied soldiers trying to get along up this valley.
So Uncle Martin would have fought his way up through this area, we think, and he made it all the way up to Lone Pine when he was killed.
Going from the Shrapnel Valley cemetery up the terrain to Plugs Point. This is the sort of ground that they were fighting through. It's just the start of October, so I guess in April would have been quite warm still, relatively. May for sure. So it is quite woody. That's the valley, Shrapnel Valley. So maybe a bit of cover, but I guess a lot of it would have been blown away, so it would have been quite exposed, I imagine. The Anzac Cove is kind of tiny, and thousands of men came here, where they should have actually landed further to the south in that bigger bay, I think. Would have the sandier and easier terrain. Instead they landed here, which is insane. I think I've said insane twice today, I'll say it again probably.
After we visited Anzac Cove, we drove up to Lone Pine to try and find great uncle Martin O'Brien, who was buried somewhere up here. The weather was pretty nice most of the day, although it was a bit windy, so I apologise for some of the sound.
Now at Lone Pine Cemetery, this is where great uncle Martin O'Brien on Dad's side is buried, so we're going to try and find him, but we might not have luck either. He might be one of the missing, so his name will be on the memorial here, but we'll find him. What's quite neat is this pine tree. So in 1915, a soldier here in Gallipoli took a seed from a pine cone and took it back to Australia, and it planted it and it grew pine trees. And so what they've done is in 1990 the Australians bought a seed back from that Australian pine tree and brought it back here, and this is it. And they've grown it. So it's really cool. It's done the whole trip, you know, original pine cone from here, went to Australia, then one of its seeds came back here and they've buried it. So it's kind of cool. There's lots of little things like that here which are really neat. It's nice.
Great Uncle Martin's death was recorded between the 1st of May 1915 and the 23rd of May 1915, so it's difficult to tell exactly when and where he died. However, his name is recorded at the Lone Pine Memorial. The Lone Pine Memorial commemorates by name nearly 5,000 men of the Australian and New Zealand forces who have no known grave. They died throughout the campaign, mostly in the Anzac sector, between the landings of the 25th of April 1915 and the evacuation of December 1915. Although many perished in the Allied offensive in August, some were buried at sea, while others died during the daily struggle against the enemy and the elements. Some 249 Australian soldiers are commemorated on the Hellers Memorial at the southern tip of the peninsula, while several memorials to the missing of New Zealand can be found on the peninsula, the largest at Chunuk Bair. So windy, it's quite hard to hear, but here at the Lone Pine Cemetery, I've found Martin O'Brien's name. Again, there's no grave marker for him because his body, they don't know where it is. So what they've done is they've put all the names on this beautiful memorial, and the New Zealanders are actually on the main memorial itself. So this is Martin. Just here. And I know that because this is the memorial to the Otago Infantry Regiment, and Martin was a private. So unfortunately the wind was too noisy at this point, so I'm just saying here that that's definitely Martin O'Brien because he's the only O'Brien on that panel from that regiment, and so I'm pretty confident that it's definitely him. So that was the Lone Pine Cemetery, and that's pretty much the end of the little video that I've taken us back through from the planning phase, getting on the plane, driving from Istanbul all the way down to Gallipoli and to Ekabat. I think that's how you pronounce it. But this is the final shots of the Lone Pine Memorial where Great Uncle Martin is. It was a special day finding James and Martin, or at least finding their names on the memorials, and just spending a little bit of time in the areas where they were fighting. It must have been just the most dreadful experience, fighting alongside your mates and seeing them die, and also losing your life there. It was great that Karen and I experienced it together as an Australian and a New Zealander. It's particularly poignant because there are so many Australians as well that lie here in these cemeteries. I've been to the Gaza Strip Cemetery, Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery, the Jerusalem one, and the Syrian one in Damascus. And I can say that they're all really wonderfully well looked after. This final shot is just something I think is really neat. Just the words on this headstone are really moving, and I just wanted to end with this little clip.